In the quiet corners of New England, there stands a wooden structure that has silently watched over centuries of American history. At first glance, it may look like an ordinary old house, with its weathered wooden walls, a stone chimney, and a roof that has seen countless storms. But behind these humble walls lies a story that takes us all the way back to the early 1600s, the very beginning of European settlement in America. This house, considered one of the oldest surviving wooden homes in New England, was built when the first waves of colonists arrived on the shores of the New World. Imagine the scene. Weary travelers, escaping religious persecution in Europe, stepping onto unfamiliar land. They carried with them little more than faith, determination, and the hope of a better life. Out of necessity, they built homes with whatever materials they could find: timber from the surrounding forests, stones from the fields, and clay from the rivers. Life inside this house was far from easy. The winters of New England were harsh, with freezing winds and heavy snow. Families huddled around the fireplace, the only source of warmth, cooking simple meals in iron pots. Children slept close together under heavy wool blankets, while their parents prayed for survival through another long, unforgiving season. But these walls also witnessed moments of joy. The laughter of children playing outside, the prayers of families gathered for Sunday worship, and the celebrations of harvest festivals after months of hard labor in the fields. This house was not just a shelter, it was a living witness to the resilience and determination of the earliest settlers. Over the centuries, the house has seen America grow and change. From colonial times to the Revolutionary War, from the birth of a nation to the modern era, this simple wooden home has remained a silent observer. Every crack in its wood and every stone in its chimney tells a story of endurance. Today, when visitors step inside, they are transported back in time. You can almost hear the creaking of old wooden floors, smell the smoke of a crackling fire, and feel the struggles and hopes of those who came before us. It is not just the oldest house, it is a reminder of where America began. Deep within the forests of early America, long before cities and paved roads existed, stood small wooden cabins built by the first pioneers. These cabins, often made from rough-hewn logs stacked one over the other, were more than just homes. They were lifelines for families who dared to push into the wild frontier. The story of the log cabin is the story of survival. Families would arrive in unexplored territories with nothing but wagons, tools, and sheer determination. Trees were cut down by hand, their trunks notched carefully to fit together, creating walls strong enough to withstand both storms and wild animals. The gaps between logs were filled with clay and mud, keeping out the bitter winter winds. Inside, life was simple and harsh. A single room served as kitchen, bedroom, and gathering space. The fireplace was the heart of the cabin, providing warmth, light, and a place to cook meals. At night, the forest outside was alive with the sounds of wolves and owls, a constant reminder of how untamed this land truly was. Yet, these cabins also became symbols of opportunity. Around them, fields were cleared for farming, and communities slowly began to form. Children who grew up in log cabins would one day become leaders, teachers, and even presidents. Abraham Lincoln himself was famously born in a one-room log cabin, showing how greatness could rise from the humblest of beginnings. For pioneers, every day was a test of strength and faith. They battled sickness, hunger, and isolation, but their determination to build a new life never wavered. Each cabin, though small, represented hope that one day their hard work would give future generations a better life. Today, when we look at preserved log cabins, we see more than just wood and stone. We see courage carved into every beam, and resilience in every rough surface. They remind us of the men and women who carved a nation out of wilderness. Far to the south and west of the early English colonies, another kind of home was being built. These were the Spanish mission houses, simple yet enduring adobe structures. With clay walls, wooden beams, and bright red tile roofs, they rose from the deserts of what is now California, Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. Built not only as shelters, but as centers of community, faith, and culture, The mission houses were created by Spanish settlers and missionaries in the late 1600s and 1700s. Their purpose was twofold: to spread Christianity among Native Americans and to establish footholds of Spanish influence in the New World. These houses were often part of larger mission complexes, which included chapels, gardens, workshops, and living quarters. Life inside. A mission house was very different from life in a northern colonial home. The thick adobe walls kept the interiors cool in the scorching desert summers and warm during chilly nights. Families grew crops like maize, beans, and squash in nearby fields, while livestock roamed the open land. The sound of church bells calling. People to prayer often echoed across the desert valleys. For Native Americans, these missions were both places of learning and of loss. Some were introduced to new farming methods, crafts, and religious practices, but many also faced the destruction of their own traditions and freedom. The walls of these mission houses, therefore, hold stories of both cooperation and conflict, of shared meals and silent struggles. Even so, architecture of these homes became deeply tied to the identity of the American Southwest. Their clay walls, red tiles, and arched doorways inspired future generations of builders. Many of these houses still stand today, their sun-baked walls glowing golden under the desert sun. Silent witnesses to centuries of history to step inside. A mission house is to step into a world shaped by faith, survival, and cultural exchange. They are not just old homes, they are monuments to the complex beginnings of the American Southwest. In the deep South of America, another type of historic home still stands tall: the plantation house. Unlike the modest cabins of pioneers, these homes were grand and imposing, often built with tall white columns, sweeping porches, and large rooms meant to display wealth and power. They are reminders of a very different side of American history, one marked by beauty but also by deep injustice. Plantation houses first appeared in the 1700s and 1800s, when the fertile lands of states like Louisiana, Mississippi, and Georgia became centers for crops like cotton, sugar, and tobacco. The owners of these vast estates built plantation houses not just as homes but as symbols of success. Their architecture was inspired by Greek revival styles, with symmetry, elegance, and grandeur meant to impress anyone who visited. Inside, the houses were richly decorated. Chandeliers hung from ceilings, staircases swept gracefully upward, and ballrooms hosted dances and gatherings of the wealthy. From the outside, they looked like places of prosperity and refinement. But behind this grandeur lay a much harsher truth. These houses and the plantations around them were built and sustained by the forced labor of enslaved African Americans. Their sweat, blood, and suffering formed the foundation of these estates. While plantation owners dined in luxury, enslaved men and women lived in small shacks, working from sunrise to sunset under brutal conditions. Thus, plantation houses stand today as complex symbols on one hand, beautiful examples of Southern architecture, and on the other, stark reminders of human suffering and inequality. They remind us of the duality of American history, elegance and exploitation side by side. When visitors walk through these houses today, many are struck not just by their beauty, but by the weight of their history. Every creak of the floorboards and every shadow in the hallway whispers of a past that must never be forgotten. These houses are not just old, they are powerful reminders of both triumphs and tragedies that shaped the South. Among the rolling hills and quiet valleys of Pennsylvania and New Jersey, some of America's oldest stone houses still stand proudly. Unlike wooden cabins that often rotted or burned, these homes were built to last. With thick gray stone walls, small, shuttered windows, and heavy wooden doors. They were fortresses of survival for colonial families in the 1600s and 1700s. Stone houses were built by settlers, many backgrounds, English, German, Dutch, and Quakers, each bringing their own building traditions. Stones were gathered from nearby fields and rivers, shaped and stacked carefully with lime mortar. These homes could withstand harsh winters, fires, and even attacks during conflicts with rival colonies or native tribes. Inside, life was practical, but more secure compared to wooden cabins. The thick walls kept heat in during freezing winters and cool air in during sweltering summers. Families gathered around large stone fireplaces, cooking stews, baking bread, and telling stories while the wind howled outside. Upstairs, children slept in lofts under steep roofs, while storage rooms held food supplies and tools for the long months ahead. Stone houses also represented stability. To build one was to make a statement. We are here to stay. These homes became centers of farming estates, inns along trade routes, sometimes even meeting places during the Revolutionary War, in fact. Many revolutionary leaders held councils in stone houses, plotting strategies for independence. Today, walking into one of these old houses feels like entering another world. The cool air, the uneven stone walls, and the worn wooden floors carry the weight of centuries. They remind us of a time when survival depended not only on hard work, but also on building something strong enough to withstand time itself. Along the rugged coastlines of America, where waves crash violently against rocks and storms roll in from the sea, stand some of the nation's oldest lighthouse keepers' houses. These homes, small and sturdy, were built beside towering lighthouses that guided ships safely through dangerous waters. The life of a lighthouse keeper was one of isolation and duty. Imagine living with your family in a small wooden house. The endless ocean stretching in front of you, storms battering your windows. At night, every evening, the keeper would climb the spiral stairs of the lighthouse, lighting the massive lamp that could save sailors from disaster. The keeper's house itself was simple but strong. Built close to the lighthouse, it often had thick wooden walls, small windows, and a roof reinforced against heavy winds. Inside, families lived with the sound of waves constantly in their ears. Children played on the rocky shores, while mothers tended small gardens, and fathers spent hours maintaining both the house and the light. These homes were more than shelters. They were symbols of responsibility. To live in one meant sacrificing comfort and community for the safety of others. Many keepers risked their lives during storms, rushing out to rescue shipwrecked sailors or repairing damaged lights. Our houses became beacons of hope as much as the lighthouses themselves. Today, many of these homes still stand as museums, their weathered walls telling stories of bravery and endurance. They remind us that even the simplest homes can hold the noblest of purposes. Long before European settlers built their wooden cabins and stone houses, Native American tribes of the Southwest had already mastered the art of durable architecture. They built adobe houses, structures made of sun-dried clay bricks, stacked into walls thick enough to withstand both scorching desert heat and sudden storms. Adobe homes were communal in nature. Families often lived side by side in multi-storied complexes with ladders connecting different levels. The clay walls kept interiors cool in the blazing summer sun and warm during chilly desert nights. Were flat, often used for drying crops or sleeping under the stars. For tribes like the Pueblo, adobe homes were more than practical shelters. They were part of a spiritual and cultural identity. The land itself provided the clay, water, and straw needed to build, symbolizing harmony between people and nature. These homes were passed down for generations, constantly repaired and rebuilt, becoming living testaments of tradition. Inside, life centered around family, farming, and community. Corn, beans, and squash, the three sisters of native agriculture, were stored in clay pots. Fire pits provided warmth and a place for cooking. The walls often echoed with songs, stories, and ceremonies that carried tribal history forward. Today, many adobe structures still stand, some over 1,000 years old. Their endurance proves the genius of their builders. When you step into one, you don't just see a house, you see a civilization that thrived long before America became a nation. As America expanded westward in the 1800s, the open prairies and fertile farmlands of the Midwest became dotted with rustic farmhouses. These homes, often simple two-story wooden or brick structures, were the heart of family farms that fed a growing nation. A farmhouse was more than just a residence, it was command central for daily life. The kitchen was the busiest room, where bread was baked, milk was churned, and harvest meals were prepared. Outside, barns, wells, and fields stretched as far as the eye could see. Life on a farm was grueling. Families rose before dawn to milk cows, plow fields, and tend crops. Children worked alongside their parents, their laughter mixing with the clatter of tools and the calls of livestock. In winter, the farmhouse became a refuge, with families gathering near wood stoves, sharing. Stories by Lamd Lilstud. These homes carried a sense of independence and pride. A farmhouse meant self-sufficiency. Families grew their own food, built their own furniture, and survived with little outside help. Many Midwestern farmhouses were also gathering places for neighbors, hosting barn dances, church meetings, and community events. Today, old farmhouses still stand across the countryside, some abandoned and weathered, others lovingly restored. They represent the backbone of America, the hardworking families whose sweat and sacrifice built the nation's agricultural foundation. In the warm, humid lands of Louisiana and along the Mississippi River, a unique style of home emerged in the 1700s, the French colonial house. Unlike the stone houses of the North or the log cabins of the frontier, these homes were adapted to a subtropical climate, raised on stilts to protect against floods, with wide verandas for shade and tall windows to catch breezes. They were both practical and elegant. The French colonial house was a blend of European design and New World necessity. Wooden shutters, iron balconies, and steep roofs gave them beauty, while elevated floors and open layouts made them livable in the hot, wet climate. Families would sit on porches in the evenings, enjoying cool breezes, while the sounds of frogs and crickets filled the air. Inside, rooms were airy and simple, but decorated with French charm. Handcrafted furniture, colorful textiles, and religious icons reflected the culture of settlers. These homes often overlooked rivers or bayous. With boats tied nearby for trade and travel, French colonial houses also became symbols of Louisiana's diverse heritage. They were homes not only to French settlers, but also to Spanish, African, and Creole families who shaped the region's culture. Music, food, and language flowed through these homes, blending into the vibrant identity that Louisiana is known for today, though many were lost to floods and storms. Those that remain stand as beautiful reminders of resilience and cultural blending. To walk through one is to feel the rhythm of old Louisiana world of porch swings, river breezes, and timeless history. Not all of America's oldest houses stood alone in fields or forests. Many were built in the heart of small towns, lining cobblestone streets that are still walked today. These homes, often shops and residences combined, became the backbone of early American communities. Picture a colonial-era street, horse-drawn carriages rolling over uneven stones, children running between market stalls, and merchants standing at their doors calling to customers. Among these, the oldest houses stood as both family homes and places of business. These houses were often built close together, with wooden or brick fronts, small paned windows, and chimneys rising above slanted roofs. Inside, families lived upstairs, while downstairs rooms served as taverns, shops, or meeting halls. In these spaces, ideas about freedom and independence were debated long before the Revolution began. As towns grew, these houses witnessed centuries of change. Lamps replaced candles, cars replaced carriages, and bustling modern streets replaced quiet colonial lanes. Yet some of these historic homes still remain, preserved as museums or heritage sites. Walking down such a street today feels like stepping back in time. The creak of a wooden door, the smell of fresh bread from an old-style bakery, or the simple sight of a centuries-old window frame can make history feel alive. These houses are not just relics, they are living connections to the everyday lives of ordinary people who helped shape a nation.